All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Mindful Marathon Conversations. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Quirk. I'm a pediatrician and a run coach, and I'm the founder of Mindful Marathon, where I help make running easy and fun for busy professionals. And I'm joined today by a very special guest and a dear friend, Shelley Swapp. Shelley, welcome to the show.
Michelle, thank you so much for having me on. It's so nice to meet with you.
Yeah, it's always wonderful to talk with you, and I always learn so much from you. So I'm very excited for this conversation.
I am too. It's a conversation that I've been wanting to have with someone for some time, and I think it will resonate with both a lot of your listeners and a lot of mine. So,
Agreed. So tell everyone a little bit about yourself before we get started, and then we'll dive in.
okay. So I'm an herbalist. I'm an herbalist and a nutritionist, and I call myself an integrative herbalist and nutritionist because I'm trained in Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic herbalism and Western herbal medicine, and as well as functional nutrition, and then I have some training in integrative medicine as well. And I do my best to integrate all of those tools with my clients because, as probably most of you know, you don't go see an herbalist generally until you've exhausted all the Western medicine resources. At least that's how I came to herbalism. Is I really truly had it felt like I had exhausted everything I could in search for resources for my children, and was finally willing to look outside of that box that felt like it was the only safe option. Um, and I know that people often get to me in that same manner. And so I have worked really, really hard because I need Western medicine in my own life and in my own care of my children. I need to be able to blend those tools together. And then I also want to be able to offer that to my clients who also need that oftentimes. They need to know that I'm not going to badmouth their doctors or badmouth their Western medicine practices, but I am going to say, hey, here's some things we can do to support this so that, if your goal is to get off this med, or if we're just trying to get that blood pressure down naturally, or whatever it is they come to me for, most of it's hormone balance, we can do that in a way that's both supportive and integrative. So
Yeah, it's the true essence of integrative practice.
I hope it's the future of all medicine, as
Yeah,
you probably do too. So
yeah. So now tell us a little bit maybe about your journey with running. Should we start there?
sure. And it actually helps me. Well, yes, that's a great place to go because that'll help with our question at hand.
Okay.
I started running about, gosh, it's been almost 19 years ago. Maybe it was 18 years ago. My third child was in the process of being diagnosed with a catastrophic neuromuscular disease. He was very young, and I started running to deal with the stress, to run away from the pain, to just be able to, you know, get up early in the morning, join some girlfriends, run my heart out, and then come back and take care of my babies, and continue going to doctor's appointments and those sorts of things. And it really was a tremendous gift and a tremendous release,
Mhm.
um, for me. And I ran and I ran and I ran and I ran, for many years until my body literally stopped allowing me to. I
Mhm.
started having hip problems and back pain and, pelvic floor issues and all the things. And so I stopped running just a couple of years ago. But um, my question to you today is, how do you run without running yourself ragged?
Mhm.
Um, when I see the topic of mindful marathon or mindful running, it just really resonates because I wished I had that opportunity. I wished I had met somebody who could have taught me to do that years ago because I wish I were still running. Um,
Yeah.
Certainly still doing a lot of hiking and weightlifting and those types of things, but certainly paid the price hard, um,
Yeah.
running and running and running. And I'm guessing as a marathon coach, you see this. So how do we see this in ourselves, and what can we do about it? Are there some tools that you can offer today for that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think your story resonates with me, and I'm sure it will resonate with a lot of runners out there. But I think when I started running, I was sort of in a similar position. Like, I think I was running to kind of get away from it all and running away from things. Like, at the time, I started running about 10 years ago, like pretty regularly. but that was a time of some pretty serious burnout, like after my residency and in my clinical job. And my dad was diagnosed with cancer at the time, so also a serious, illness in our family. And I think at the beginning, I was really running for stress relief and to get away from all of that. And after my dad passed away, I think I was running away from really like dealing with the grief of that. Like I just kept moving forward. And that is very easy for, I think, a lot of type
Right.
A busy professionals, especially in the field of medicine, or in a high stress job where you're busy all the time because your mind doesn't have to really be on other things. So you
Right.
can avoid it for a long time, but they say grief is patient.
It is. It is. And I find that a lot of women like, well, we haven't been taught how to deal with the grief. We've been taught to just pick up, move forward. And, maybe your religious beliefs or your spirituality is like, well, it'll be fine later,
Mhm,
this will
mhm.
all work out. We'll see them at another time or something. And so if it's loss or if it's sickness or whatever, it's like it's fine, it'll just work itself out. And I have women that come to me. I can't tell you how many women have come to me after running marathons, after training for marathons, and have said, I didn't lose a pound. I didn't I signed up because when I was younger, I used to run and I would lose the weight and I would feel great and everything. And then um, I I signed up for this marathon and I trained and I didn't lose a pound. I ran the whole thing, um, and my body didn't respond the way it used to. And that is always a sign for me that that's a stressor, that it's created a lot of stress in your body instead of giving you the relief and the burn that you were hoping for.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's maybe why I fell in love with the marathon distance. I mean, first, it was something I never thought I would do, but during that training cycle, I think that, I came back from the race wanting to tell everyone to go and run a marathon and it will change your life and you will have the key to the universe and all of these things, but I don't I don't think that we all have to do that. I think that for me it was really all of that time spent with myself in the training and like working through all of this while I was training for those 4 5 6 months, whatever it was. It was a long time spent with myself on the trail, and I love when that happens for other runners, but I do find that yeah, a lot of runners are running away from a lot of things. So back to your original question of finding the mindfulness in it and
Oh, so
how,
how do we shift that?
yeah, I think it's a balance. Like a lot of, I talk about training so much and, the training plan and the training cycle for a certain race, but it's really a balance of the exercise and then the rest and the recovery. And I think for me, that has been a huge tool because before I was so focused on the training and moving and
Right.
going forward and hitting the next goal, hitting the next pace, getting faster. But now I've really learned to embrace the rest. And I think that has been a key for me.
Tell us more about that. What do you mean by rest?
um, Multiple things. I think number one, I mean, at the heart of it, just taking days off of running. Like one of the physical therapists I've worked with, Dan, he always would tell me, Michelle, runners like to run, and that's all
True.
they want to do.
Yeah, it's true.
They don't want to really do any other form of exercise or stretching or yoga or things like that. And so some people are surprised when they hear like, oh, you're a running coach, you must run every day. I'm like, no, I tend to run about 4 times a week. Like that's kind of my usual when I'm in base training mode. I run about 4 times a week, but I take days off. And then after, certain training cycles, like if I run a long race, I take some time off of running for a period of days to weeks, depending on how long it is. So I feel like I'm much better at giving my body the rest it needs just in the day to day. And then also optimizing sleep. I mean, for a while, definitely I was sleep deprived. I mean, certainly as a resident and as a new doctor, I surely wasn't getting enough sleep, and my sleep cycle was very erratic, like working day shifts and night shifts, and
Right.
a shift that very strange shifts, like 5 p to 1 a, and So sleep was really, really a hot mess about 10 years ago, and it's much better now. Like I have a regular sleep schedule. I really put a focus on getting to bed roughly at the same time every night. I mean, it's not perfect, but we try.
Mm. That's huge. I think, and I know that my running self just a few years ago, like would have panicked at the thought of rest.
Oh,
Like, oh my goodness, if I stop running for a few days, I'll
mhm.
probably lose ground, or I'll
Yeah,
probably, I will lose my speed, or it'll be harder, or what am I going to do with myself if I don't run for a couple of days?
yeah.
What do you do during that time?
Um, I think I have probably tried to replace it with something else that takes it down a notch. So I've we're so tapped into our sympathetic system, there's just so much we're always go, go, go. It's really hard to slow down and give ourselves time to breathe. So having a little bit of empty space and maybe taking time for meditation, yoga, um, anything that taps into the parasympathetic to kind of balance that out. So on days when I don't run, I do try to, maybe I won't do yoga for as long as I would go out for a run, but just putting that in the spot where normally on my calendar I would be running, just doing yoga or doing some meditation instead. That's really helped. What do you do?
I'm not running anymore. I hike. So I
Okay.
do a little bit of trail running because it's easier on my
Yeah.
body. Um, but I've shifted to more weight training as I've gotten older
hmm
to protect my muscles and my bones and all that stuff, which has been a really big shift as a runner to go from, I always thought it would be crazy hard to stand in one place and do weight training after running, 8, 9, 10 miles and getting that wonderful runner's high. But it's actually turned out to be really, really helpful. You and I met in a meditation group
hmm
so we both have been studying yoga nidra together
Yep.
with Dr. Rajmi Sharam. Is that the type of yoga that you're putting in place, or are you putting more like power yoga, flow yoga? What are you doing in those days?
Yeah. So Dr. Rashmi Shram is amazing. Everyone should go and check her out. But she got me started with just a regular meditation routine. Like same way I started running 10 minutes around the block a few times a week. That's how I started with a morning meditation. And then through her group, through her course, we've learned this powerful technique called yoga nidra, and it's a time investment. It's 30 minutes, and I started to notice that I was getting very stressed on Sunday night before the start of the work week. Like Monday is my long day in clinic, and I was getting, yeah, I could feel the stress. And so I think meditation really helped with awareness of that. And then I decided, well, instead of doing the yoga nidra, like I was doing it haphazardly at different times during the week, I started to do it on Sunday night. And I noticed that that was a nice shift. Even my lovely Garmin watch and all of the numbers that it keeps track of, my resting heart rate is often lowest on Sunday night after I do the yoga nidra and go into the week. Now, during the week, I also do some flow yoga. I wouldn't say it's power yoga, but just like an easy flow to get things stretched out on an off running day. But yes, I incorporate all of those things, but I like to start the week off now on a Sunday night with the yoga nidra. It's really helped.
Oh, that's really smart. Okay, so what I'm hearing as far as incorporating mindfulness into our running is um, rest, prioritizing rest. And so you're running, what, 3 to 4 days a week when you're in training mode,
Mhm.
um, and giving your body, is that giving yourself a break in between each day of running, or do you have 2 back-to-back days? It sounds like with 4.
I have 2 back-to-back days, but usually the way the training is 80% of at least 80% or more of the week is at an easy, like conversational pace.
Mhm.
So this is also, I would say maybe a common mistake of newer runners is that everyone tries to go out and run as far and as fast
Fast as they can, yeah.
as they can. And they go the same pace on every run. It doesn't matter if it's Monday or if you're trying to do your long run on Saturday and you want to go 5 miles, everybody keeps the same pace. But when we write a training plan, there's balance in there so that if you do want to work on your speed, you can do some harder workouts where you do some, interval training or speed work, but then around that day, you either have rest or maybe you have an easy conversational jog so that you give your body time to recover. And the same thing if I do, I'm training for a half marathon. If I have my long run on one of the weekend days, usually one weekend day is the long run and one day is a nice day of rest. Like I wouldn't want to go out and try to do anything more than that after running so long. So the way the training is built, there's a lot more we're tipping the proportion toward easy runs as opposed to hard runs, and it's often a hard thing to learn if you've
Yeah.
been doing it and you've been pounding and pounding for so long, and getting results, by the way, right? Like you will be able to run the race and get results, but you may end up injured in the process. So
Right.
part of this journey has been learning to take a step back, learning what like an easy nice jog pace feels like. And after a while, like that feeling feels so good that's why I think it's stuck for so long. But it really does help prevent injury.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. So you're giving yourself rest both on off days and giving yourself rest on days as well. You're
Yeah,
not hardcore push days every single time you head out to run.
no.
That's wonderful. And I'm sure there's a lot of data to back that up as far as, the science of building muscle and building endurance and protecting all of those vital organs and things that we don't want to be damaging, or tendons we don't want to be damaging while we're pushing ourselves to the brink.
Yeah.
And then adding in some mindfulness practices in preparation for these runs and for these more stressful days, instead of just using running as your way to deal with the stress, right?
Yes, exactly. And I can offer, on the run, I usually run outside. Every once in a while, a few times a year, I'll go to the treadmill for bad weather, but I try to run on the trail, and really I don't run with any music or headphones or anything, and just try to tap into nature. And I have my animal friends on the trail and birds and things, and I think that really helps, as well.
I love that. Rajmi was on an earlier episode of the Wellness Restoration Project, my podcast, and she talked about how to even begin the process of being mindful and adding some meditative practices in your day. Her first suggestion was to just go for a walk and begin to focus on whatever it is that you see,
Mhm.
trees, birds, what you hear, what you see. What a beautiful way to head into a run. I mean,
Yeah.
how for how many years did I just plug in the loudest music I could find and just go?
Yeah, and it's really a way, I try to have my runners be curious about it if they've never done that before, or they're always used to running with an audiobook or music or whatever. But just to take your headphones out for maybe 10 minutes and really try to feel how that effort feels in your body. Like it's a very helpful exercise to really figure out what feels like an easy pace for you if you don't have any other input. So it's kind of a fun experience to try.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'll have to add that to my list of things to try when I head out there, is to just listen to my body instead of put in a song to decide the beat or the rhythm of how fast I'm going to be running. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's beautiful. Those are some great tips.
Now, before, you had mentioned, we were talking a little bit about adrenal fatigue,
Yes.
or, well, how do you run without running yourself into the ground? That was really what got us talking. But could you talk a little bit about that relationship with the sympathetic and parasympathetic? I know that that's your jam.
Yeah, it is. And it's been so oftentimes the women that will come to me that have been, they just finished a marathon and they're so discouraged because they haven't lost any weight and they're exhausted. They just didn't have that, like life is so much better and everybody should go run a marathon experience like you talk about, or like they did when they were younger.
Yeah.
And I've certainly had that same like exhilarating high after having, finishing this amazing race and training program. Um, And the very first thing I have them do is go back to level 1 and level 2, like zone 1 and zone 2 training, and not get out of that for a very long time. Just keep that heart rate very, very low, because what we want to do is to begin to get out of that sympathetic nervous system. We want running to not be running from a tiger. We want it to be moving mindfully, like you talk about, and resetting that heart rate. Because when we're getting that heart rate up really high, that is another sign to our body that that we need to be, that we're in trouble, that we need to be, flooded. That we release cortisol, um, which makes it really hard to burn fat. You can't burn fat when you've got cortisol levels that are high. And so the only way that if you're in adrenal fatigue and you really are trying to lose weight and you're really struggling with metabolic issues and energy, we need to calm your body down so that it can sink back into that capacity to unlock the fat stores, because our body does that to us. Our body does that because it's trying to protect us. Like, that's oftentimes that adrenal fatigue is from running at top speed. Our cortisol, our stress hormone levels have been so high for so long. And then we add changes in hormones for women as they age, that the cortisol levels just get higher, and the protective hormones like estrogen and progesterone become less abundant, or more irregular. And we really begin to, instead of being able to utilize the foods that we're eating, our body just grabs it and pulls it into the fat tissue, into the tissue to store it. We're in trouble. We're in trouble. There could be a major emergency, and we need to have these, that we need to have this glucose um, in our storage facility in case of later,
Yeah.
there's thyroid issues and all those things that go along with it. And so part of unlocking your body's ability to do that is getting back into that parasympathetic mode, with meditative practices, with sleep. Sleep is huge, as you mentioned. Without sleep, nothing works. And then making sure that our exercise is something that boosts the happy hormones, instead of boosts the stress hormones. And staying in that low speed is one of the ways that we do that. Still moving our body, still activating our muscles, which is what we need to burn glucose, which is then going to help us, once we get through our glucose stores, then we can start getting into our fat stores. But that allows that parasympathetic to be the dominant
Yeah.
force in your entire workout instead of sympathetic.
Yeah. And I wonder what this would do for all those injuries. Like, of course, part of this is, overtraining and
Yeah.
the miles on your legs and your body. But
Yeah.
I wonder, even with training for long distance races and marathons, if we really optimized ourselves this way and
Yeah.
really tapped into that parasympathetic, I wonder how,
Yeah. There's,
what it would do
there's,
for our injury risk.
yeah, no, in fact, there is a lot of data that shows that it significantly reduces your injury risk. And then if we shift and we go back thousands of years to some of these patterns from traditional Chinese medicine or from Ayurveda,
Mm,
when we see injuries in the ankles or in the tendons, so hips and ankles are big, and knees, that is always pointing us to the kidneys. And not in the sense of like a kidney disease, but the kidneys in Chinese medicine and in these Western, or excuse me, these Eastern
sure.
traditions represent what we call the adrenals here in the United States. I mean, we never really have fatigued adrenals.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of a misnomer that the adrenals are going to get exhausted. They keep working. It's just all the other things that they are supposed to be doing that the trigger effect is what gets exhausted in our bodies. And we see that same pattern in all of the literature from the last thousands and thousands of years, is that when the body gets run down, when we get really depleted, then we start to see we see an inability for those tendons and joints to be nourished and to
Mhm.
stay strong and supple. And so we see that we're more prone to injury. And so we often will see that, at the end of that process, where someone comes in and they've got joint pain, or they've got torn ligaments, or they've got injuries or things. And then we have to back that up and begin to replenish and replenish and replenish. But if we can do like you're suggesting, start with replenishing practices, start with that parasympathetic system, and do those things that are mindful, then hopefully we don't get to that injured and that depleted state, and
Yeah.
can still continue to love and participate in the sport that we love.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's really, I think about longevity in the sport all the time. Like, I really hope to be running at an old age.
Yeah.
So I really want to do everything I can to be able to preserve that. But yeah, it's definitely a balance, and it's a journey that I've been on also. I mean, I certainly didn't have I didn't have any of this when I started 10 years ago, and I'm still learning along the way.
Oh, all of us are. And I just think social media platforms are such a gift to women, especially because we get to have these conversations that I don't know that we had anybody to have these with, 10 years ago or 15 years ago. When I started running, it never would have occurred to me
Yeah.
to, how would you have even looked for this information? And it's
Yeah.
so amazing that we have this at our fingertips. We can listen to it as we walk down the street. We can watch it while we're doing other chores on YouTube, or it's just such a gift. So I've been really grateful for your time and your input today.
Yeah, you too. You too. I have one more question for you, maybe. I mean, this is probably a big question, but if someone wants to dip their toe into, herbs, or they're a runner and they would they would like some help. I mean, I dipped my toe. You made me some wonderful tea that I have been drinking before bed, and I love. And I'm a tea drinker already, and I love it. But if someone wants to dip their toe in, where could they start?
I would recommend working with someone first off. It can be tempting to just walk into an herb shop to read something online and then just be like, I'm going to go pick up some ginseng, or I'm going to go pick up, I've heard rhodiola is really great for, when for stress, or for, or ashwagandha. Those are all like kind of great gateway herbs that people hear about and want to try. Um, and I obviously have been on this road for a long time. And a lot of people will come to me and say, well, I tried that, it doesn't work, or it gives me palpitations, or I didn't sleep well, or whatever after I took that. And so they want it to be kind of like a pharmaceutical,
Uh-huh.
where it's like, oh, here's the symptom, here's the herb, let's match them together. And it's not that way at all. It's very much about using herbs to replenish the body to help remove those symptoms. We look at those symptoms as harbingers of, of imbalance. And
Mhm.
so then we want to shift and go underneath. So even if it's just, meeting with someone for 15 to 20 minutes to say, here's where I'm at, and let them ask you, like myself, I'd be like, tell me about your sleep, tell me about your energy, tell me about your bowels. I know people love talking about their bowel movements with strangers, but those are kind of the big three things that I look for. And with women, I'm always going to ask about a cycle, hormonal cycles. Like, is PMS a big issue? Are you having a lot of pain during your period, or has it completely disappeared? With a lot of runners that are running hard time, big time miles, that tends to happen.
Mhm.
And then let us put together, a couple of simple things for you, where we can hit that replenish, we can hit that restore, and we can hit that um, opening up some pathways to help increase circulation. If you're trying to get um, better at, if you're trying to press your miles and you want to be hitting those milestones, we can do some things to help improve that for you without deeply depleting your body. Um, there are some great ancient formulas that were created for athletes. I mean, think about it. We had warriors, we had people who were running from one country or one city to another to deliver messages. And so there are some phenomenal time tested formulas that have been created for people whose bodies were being required to do amazing feats.
Mhm.
And so we have that research to reach from, and it's not an easy, like, here, just take this. We want to make sure that it's being tweaked so that it fits the needs, your individual needs. But that's where, if somebody's really interested, I would love for them to find an herbalist that they can meet with at least once or twice, so that they get the benefit of herbs meeting you where you're at,
Mhm.
instead of trying to just take a couple of things and use them as a band-aid approach, because that, I don't think that works well for nutrition or mindfulness or any of those things, just like really taking the time to see what it is that I need and what's going to work best for me is going to give you the best results
Yeah,
across the board.
that's great. Yeah, I think a lot of people want that Band-Aid or a quick fix. That's
Oh, I do.
the world we live in. And it's the same with running. Like you can't, I mean, I wouldn't recommend coming from the couch and running a marathon tomorrow, like it's a process, it's a journey.
Yeah, and how, like, is that something where people can like download training programs, or what's the best way to get started if you're really serious about um, being more mindful in your running approach and you really want to run a marathon or a half marathon or a 10K or something fabulous?
Yeah, I think my general advice is always to start low and go slow. So no matter where you're starting from, if you're on the couch or if you were a runner or an athlete, maybe in a prior time in your life, and you haven't really done that form of exercise in a while, just start somewhere, like start where you're at. And you don't have to go out there and again try to, run a certain amount of time or distance, but maybe just tie on your sneakers and start with a walk or start with a run walk, maybe 10-15 minutes a few times a week just to get started. But there's a walk plan on my website if you want to start with walking, like for all the walkers out there.
Right.
Running sounds scary to many people, and I recognize that. So there's a walk plan you can download on my website and start there, and then go from there. I write training plans for all sorts of distances, and I've done a lot of group programs, mostly for beginners or runners who haven't run in a while. So you can check it out on the website. We'll be enrolling another group soon.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I know you're on Instagram as well, so we can so they can follow you there and get some more information as to when your groups are starting uh
Yeah.
and
Yeah. And tell us where everybody can find you. You have a wonderful podcast.
yes, so Wellness Restoration Project, if you're listening there or if you're here with us on YouTube. And then I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, and I have a website, all the same name, Shelley Swapp, Shelley with an EY, and two P's at the end. And that's how you'll find me on most of the social media sites out there. So
That's great. Yep. And I'm at mindful.marathon on Instagram. The YouTube channel is just Mindful Marathon.
mindful. Okay, great. Well, for those listening on my podcast, I will put it in the show notes.
Yep. And for those of you on YouTube, I'll put Shelley's information below. You can just click over there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michelle. It's been so helpful to have this conversation. I hope that my listeners got a lot out of it too. I'm sure
Yeah.
that's
And thank you for joining me, Shelley. I always learn so much from you, and talking to you is just a gift. So thank you.
you. Take care.
You too. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. If you liked it, please subscribe and share it with a friend. And if you are a newer runner or a runner who hasn't run in a while and you're looking to get back into the sport, you can find out how to work with me over on my website, which is mindful-marathon.com. See you on the next episode.